to the latest episode of the UK Glamping podcast, hosted by us here at Glampitect. This episode, we are going to be giving a little bit of insight into the customer's perspective of what it's like to go through the journey with Glampitect and set a site up, right through from initial kind of feasibility assessment through to the planning permission and actually getting the site open and operating. So with that in mind, I have two guests for us this week. So I'm spoiling you. We have Callum Moffat, my fellow senior sales consultant here at Glampitect. Thanks for coming along, Callum.
Yeah, hi guys, excited to be here and explore this with everyone.
And we also have one of Callum's customers, Dawes, owner and operator of Mount Ephraim. Thank you very much for coming, Lucy.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, absolutely. So thank you very much for agreeing to be the first kind of customer face on the podcast. We really want to just give people an idea from the customer perspective, I guess what we're like to deal with as a company, and just a little bit more about what the process looks like from the other side of the coin, I guess. So I suppose the best place to start would be to ask you how you actually kind of discovered us as a company.
Yeah, so I've been running my family business here, which is already established. It's Mount Ephraim Gardens for the last 6 years. And we already have an established wedding business and some accommodation here. When I got involved, glamping was just beginning to take off. This is back in 2018. And I was very keen to consider glamping. However, I joined the business and there was so much to do. It was a little bit bonkers. So I had to totally put the idea on the back burner. 4 years later, things were a bit more established. I'd found my feet here, got things up and running in the way that I wanted to. And I started thinking back about glamping. This time I kind of wanted to do it for myself rather than just sort of supporting my parents and brother who own the house and estate here.
Right, okay.
And it was I spoke to my brother about it. He was behind me setting up my own business. And then I was like, where do I go from here? There was one very stormy day back in February 2022 when you literally just couldn't leave the house. And I was like, okay, today is the day to dedicate to getting this set up. And I Googled and I came across Glampitect and very quickly realised, I needed some help with this vision and this idea. So I put in a call to Callum and we went from there.
Fantastic. Yeah, so firstly, it's good to hear the search engine optimization's working and people are finding us when they're on Google. So when people first contact the company, it's a little bit of a lottery as to who they might get. They'll either get one of myself, Callum, as you were lucky enough to, or Jack and Imogen, who are part of the sales team. So that initial port of call, obviously, from our side, is generally just a bit of a fact-finding information, if you like, to get a bit of an idea where you're at and what you'd like to achieve. So from there, I understand that through initial conversations, you identified that a feasibility study would be the most sensible first step. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I felt like it was definitely the right thing to do. It's very reasonably priced. I think you're honest about keeping it reasonably priced. So customers will go for it and then discover whether they would like to kind of take it further and use your services more. But it just felt like it was going to save me a lot of time. And I'm no expert in this at all and certainly have no experience of planning. Never done anything like it. So that's the reason I decided to do the feasibility study and just to, sense check it all and help hopefully prove that I wasn't completely mad, hoping to set this up here. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's exactly the point, is that much like Callum, our CEO, when he set up, 99% of people who consider doing glamping have no idea where to start. And that's exactly why feasibility assessments are such an important part of our customer process. So how did you find that once you got your results? Did you find that it answered exactly what you wanted to, or did it throw up things that you weren't expecting?
No, I mean, it was great. It was very positive. It felt that the study proved that there was definitely a market for it in this area. We're very lucky in terms of our location. We're an hour from London. We're near the Kent coast, Canterbury, Whitstable. So it's such a kind of hotspot for people, especially from London, wanting to get out and escape city life. So in terms of the location, and also look at glamping locally. There wasn't actually there's not that many people doing what we were looking to do. I think one of the really useful things from the feasibility study was thinking about what route we wanted to go down in terms of the pods. It identified that our local council had rejected a number of applications for shepherd's huts. So that made us think, okay, well, let's go down the kind of more traditional timber pod route, which fits in with our surroundings here, and it just worked for us as well. So that was really useful, and really just, I think, as well as all the information on the ROI, the competitor analysis, it was that planning side that I just did not have the knowledge on at all in terms of how to approach it. And again, when we then went further, I realised I desperately, needed your services and support to be able to put together all of those plans for me. But it was a really useful document that just kind of rubber stamped everything. Yeah, this is a sensible idea. You should give it a go.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, Kent, obviously an absolutely stunning part of the country as well to be in. For anyone listening or indeed watching who would like to know a little bit more about Lucy's business, do please have a little look in the episode description. We'll put some links to Lucy's website where you can go and check the pods out and hopefully go and stay as well and check them out firsthand. So once you've got the feasibility study results, Callum, what's the next steps for the customers from there? Once they've received their results, where does it go next?
Yeah, so after the results with Lucy, we'd been in touch through the process, and as she mentioned, with that early chat and trying to help throughout the journey. But what's the really exciting phase of any project is after you've had the results and digested the findings a little bit, we set up a post-feasibility consultation call where we really dive into the findings in a bit more detail, answer any questions that Lucy had, start thinking about the best approach to the planning process, to the unit choice, to the site design, and really start unpacking all the key decisions. And yeah, as Lucy said, there was some really exciting stuff in there. There was a mix of approvals and refusals off the back of the feasibility study, but we felt quite confident with the business diversification and with the sites that Lucy had established that we could create quite a special site and get it through planning. So yeah, on that call it was about starting to map out the best approach to everything and helping with everything we can off the back of that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, we've covered off in a previous episode that at that post-feasibility call there's kind of a few different options that are generally laid out for clients depending on the results of their study. Obviously option one is unfortunately sometimes don't continue to pursue it, which is never a nice conversation to have with people, but lovely that wasn't the case for yourself, Lucy. But then it's generally either a pre-planning application or a full planning application from there on. So, Lucy, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose to go the way you did after that consultation call, why you chose to go to a full planning application, and indeed, if you wouldn't mind, why you chose to trust us to do that rather than, say, a local architect or something like that?
Yeah, of course. So we decided to go for the full planning light option. We chose the light option really because rather than just full planning, because we hoped there wouldn't be too many complications post planning. We felt because we already had an established tourism business here and the business diversification argument, we felt that if they were going to say yes, it would be fairly straightforward in terms of that. There was a couple of things I think at the end of it, but and budgeting. We
Sure.
just wanted to save a few pounds on that process as well. So we took a bit of a gamble, and we were lucky in the end. It worked out for us. I chose to go with you because you had really impressed me throughout the process, and because you're experts within what we were specifically looking to do and within glamping. You had all the contacts as well, certainly with the pod manufacturers. Obviously, we could have found that out ourselves anyway without going with you, but it was definitely just trust in what you do and looking at how Callum McLeod had developed his business and set this up, and you'd been there, done that, got the t-shirt as it were. So and obviously Callum Moffat was lovely to deal with, and we were just it felt like I had an ally. my husband at that point was like, is she really going to get this up and running? He was definitely, he was, enthusiastic, but totally not involved. So I felt very much on my own. So it was really nice to have allies through that process who were guiding me along the way as well. And the knowledge and expertise, which I said earlier, I had no idea where to start.
Amazing. I'm guessing Callum slipped you a tenner before the recording of this to give him a bit of hype there. But no, it's lovely to get that kind of feedback for sure.
Full disclosure, yeah. We always say we love to hold people's hands through the journey and support them, but it's actually nice to hear it from a client who's experienced that. So thanks, Lucy, and promise she's not on the payroll.
You just have to come and stay in my pods now, Callum.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to come down. So once you'd made that decision to go to full planning, I guess your contact with Callum reduced a little bit there because you then get introduced to our design team and you were assigned a singular designer specifically, who I believe in your case was Tony. How did you find that transition from kind of dealing with pretty much Callum right the way through the process to perhaps dealing with somebody else primarily from there on? Was it still as consultative or...?
Yeah, there were no problems at all. Tony was great. She picked everything up. She, was very well versed in everything. Callum was still available if I had any queries. And they were both really personable and, really easy to get hold of. And it didn't cause me any issues at all dealing with different people. So it was great. Worked really well.
Perfect. So the system works. Happy days. So one thing that a lot of our clients ask us about right at the start is timeframes involved in all of this, and it's probably Callum, you probably agree, it's probably the most difficult question for us to answer, I would say, is about how long is a piece of string, because there are just so many extraneous factors that can have an impact on how quickly this can potentially happen. But could you give us a little bit of your own experience of the sort of timeframes involved? So from the point you submitted your application, how long was that then with the council before you received an approval?
Well, it took longer than we hoped, but I think we were optimistic. I was aware that the planning process is problematic at times, and my brother-in-law and sister have done some building projects, and they had warned me. So I wasn't completely naive, but I was also very optimistic. We put in the application July. It was submitted 2022. And the council came back quite quickly and said, we'll have a decision for you by the middle of October. And I was amazed. I thought this sounds very good. Yeah. And started kind of working on that basis. So I had at this point told Graham from Timber Builds over in Northern Ireland that I wanted to work with him and that I wanted to have his pods. So we put a refundable deposit down with him. But we weren't able to move anything else forward, because we didn't know that we were going to get planning. We did not want to spend any money unnecessarily. That's where I made a bit of a mistake in terms of our power requirements. And I probably should have done a bit more due diligence on the power supply there. That's the only thing that has caused us a big issue. I can delve into that or we can ignore it, but I'll answer the original question. Then the council came back to us in mid-October, said, can we have an extension of 2 months? And we said, 2 weeks. And I said, yeah, of course. Then they went quiet. Then we had lots of changes in personnel. Well, I was amazed that they came back to me. But yeah, then they did what I think councils do. Then they went completely quiet, couldn't get hold of them for love nor money. Just getting there with the original planner. And they said, yeah, we'll have a decision for you next week. And then the next time I emailed, I got out of office, I've left the company, and I was like, oh my God. I was hassling them a little bit at this point. And then amazingly, about 2 days later, a new person had picked it up and gave us the news that we'd been hoping for, and it was approved. So that was February 23. So I guess in planning terms, not long. For us, it felt like a very long wait.
Yeah, so around 8 months. I think, to be fair, that is probably one of the quicker ones compared to the national average. I think a lot of clients can be misled by the fact that councils will aim to respond within 8 to 12 weeks generally. So when they get that first notification of mid-October, you go, hooray, and you start putting all sorts of things in place. But generally that first response is either like you experience, I need more time or I need more information. So not surprised that it didn't all get turned around in the space of 3 months, but glad to hear that it didn't take an awful lot longer.
On this one as well, I think there was obviously some surveys that requested at the invalid point as well, and we had a bit of understanding from the feasibility study that a previous approval had taken about a year to be approved too. So I think hopefully that helped in terms of like managing expectations and what was next. But I think we kind of knew, a little bit at the offset, this might not be one of the smoothest ones. And we were also off the back of COVID when a lot of councils were really overwhelmed with the amount of applications, the quality of things like pre-planning applications at the time. So we were kind of battening down the hatches and hoping for the best while still chasing them as kindly as we could in that period.
Yeah, it's a balancing act dealing with any council to do with anything, to be fair, because it's you're kind of beholden to whatever they want to do, but learning how to apply pressure in the right way is something of an art. I think that thankfully our design team have taken off the sales guy's hands, so we don't have to stress about. It's interesting you touched on the power thing, and I would like to just briefly circle back round to that, because we quite often see that once you're approved, that is when hurdles can potentially be identified that perhaps clients hadn't thought about, which can delay obviously the expected time frame between approval and actually being able to open your doors and welcome clients. So would you mind telling us a little bit more about that and the sort of time frames involved in getting yourselves up and running as a business?
Yeah, so we didn't actually open until New Year's Eve, just gone, so 2023. So 10 months after planning was approved. We had always, the site that we chose, and again, there's lots of discussions with Callum and Tony over the site that we chose within the estate, because it's a big estate here, we've got 800 acres. But we wanted to site the glamping pods near to the gardens. We've got the most beautiful 10 acres of Edwardian gardens here, which are open to the public 6 months a year. And it's such a bonus for people who stay in our B&B and holiday let to be able to enjoy them out of regular opening hours. And we knew that would be a real plus for the pods. So I did choose a field sort of adjacent to the gardens. And, you know, I'll be honest, I naively saw some telegraph poles, met with our electrician, made some assumptions that we could go through some agricultural land. My husband's a landscape gardener. He was going to dig all the trenches.
Handy.
You know, it all seemed a bit too easy. I do remember saying to Callum when we first started the process, I have no idea what I'm doing with these utilities and services. This is not my forte. I've never built anything in my life. So we made those assumptions. We got UK Power Networks out. They wanted to charge us £75,000 to come 300 metres. At this point,
yikes.
I was a bit scared because Graham was about to deliver my pods. They were actually plonked onto the concrete pads in May. And I was still battling with power. However, there's always a solution. So we got a great electrical engineer. He came out and we looked at existing power supplies from the house. And we were very lucky. We had a 3-phase power supply doing nothing, but we had to dig through the gardens to get them to the pods. It was still more expensive than we'd budgeted for, and that's the only bit, I think, sort of from the feasibility study, that the budget was not, you know, was nowhere near what we ended up paying. We dug through the gardens, but we had to wait for the gardens to close, hence the delay. So the gardens closed at the end of September, because we didn't want a great big trench right the way through the middle of our lovely gardens. We had weddings. My parents and brother weren't going to allow that. But as soon as they closed, we dug the trenches, got the power in. It was the most exciting day of my life when we switched those lights on in the pods, because at one point I thought I'd be selling 2 lovely pods without any power. And it was fantastic. And the water was very simple. Everything else, the waste facilities, expensive, but all worked. It was just that. But yeah, it was known as Power to the Pods Day, and it was very, very exciting.
Good. Yeah, I think, as Callum, you'll probably agree, but it's certainly been a recurring theme with my clients, is that power does tend to be one of the biggest, not necessarily headaches, but hurdles to getting open. And I liken the utility companies quite a lot to the councils in that you kind of have to trust what they say to you at first port of call. But then when you get a bill like 70k, I'm not surprised you questioned it, because that is an enormous figure. Probably the bit that is most difficult for us to predict as part of the cost calculator, so no surprise to hear you say that there was the bit that wasn't quite right. Can't encourage clients to engage with utility providers early enough. The sooner you have those conversations, hopefully, the less difficult that process becomes. But yeah, it's...
We should have started talking to them sooner, so, you know, totally take that one on the chin. But you know what? I always say this to my husband and anyone who wants to listen. Had we known it was going to cost what it cost, I mean, we brought it massively down from 75,000,
sure.
But it was still more expensive than we imagined. I don't know, maybe we wouldn't have done it. So in a way, not knowing meant that we then had to do it because we had some pods. And yes, it's going to take a little bit longer to get that return on the investment. Business is going really well, and I'm hopeful that we will do it. So sometimes being naive works out in your favour.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes, yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So, yeah, speaking of which, how's business? You're, nearly 4 months on now at the time of recording from opening your doors. How's it been? Have you been busy? What?
It's great. Yeah, we just have the 2 pods at the moment. We have planning permission for 4. We had guests on New Year's Eve, the first time that we opened, and then we didn't have anything for a couple of weeks in January, unsurprisingly. And then since about the 3rd weekend in January, we've been booked up every weekend.
Fantastic.
Without fail. Had some midweek bookings too. And occupancy is probably still only about 40% at the moment, but for January, February, March, I'm really happy with that. I'm delighted. I think it bodes really well for the summer. And most importantly, we've had nothing but 5-star reviews.
Fantastic.
So it's great. People are loving coming here, which is amazing. It's really, really gratifying.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. To be getting that sort of occupancy straight out of the gate is certainly a very positive sign. Albeit it's a little bit warmer in Kent than it is for Callum and I up here in Scotland. It's still not the warmest time of year for anybody in the UK. So it's natural for occupancy to be a little bit lower at those sorts of times of year. And we're probably just coming into the start of what we would describe as peak season now. So exciting times ahead for you.
What's nice as well is you've built your kind of marketing and added that into your existing brand and your existing website and booking system, and it's really nice to hear you've kind of hit the ground running so quick, because it is sometimes nice for clients to have a bit of a run-in into peak season, the spring, summer, and really kind of iron out and flesh out any logistical stuff of running it. So it's brilliant to hear how well it's
really
been going
pleased
for
for you.
Yeah, no, we're so pleased.
Everybody, please do check out the description below so that you can take a look at Lucy's website yourselves and hopefully go and have the pleasure of staying for yourselves. And Callum and I will certainly try and take you up on that offer of coming down as well. It's part of the country I know very well. I lived in Kent myself before I moved up here, so sure I'll find a few old pubs that we could go and revisit, Callum, and see what we can do. I'll give you the tour.
We are walking distance between 2 lovely country pubs, so another big plus.
Perfect.
For the location.
Sounds ideal.
Meander back through the gardens to the pods after that.
Carefully, yeah, exactly. Fantastic. Well, listen, that's just about everything I wanted to cover with you today, Lucy. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to come and speak to us and all of our listeners and watchers. What I'd like to just finish on, if it's right with yourselves, is just to get an idea. If you were kind of starting again now, is there any kind of one thing that you would say to prospective business owners that you would either do differently, or one piece of advice that you can offer them off the back of your journey?
Yeah, I mean, it would be get a very definite quote for the power to begin with, and really think about the infrastructure and that side of it. It was a one big kind of stumbling block. Other than that, I and so compared to some planning applications, everything, I think it was fairly plain sailing, really. So we've been lucky in lots of ways.
Good message. The earlier you can consult people on any aspect that is going to mean money leaving your bank account, the better informed you're going to be. So I think that's a cracking piece of advice. Okay, well, thank you very much again to both of you for coming along. We will leave it there, and to some viewers, we will see you again soon on the next episode. Thanks, guys.